What's going on? It's your man Scribs, and today what we're going to talk about is content and creating content that actually does something for you. Now, you've probably watched a lot of different gurus talk about how to create content, and their focus is more on how to create content that gets you the big numbers, the big front end numbers. I like to call them the front end numbers. So a lot of views, subscribers, going viral and all that wonderful kind of stuff. I'm more interested in the content that actually does work for me. So the content that actually makes me money. Now, I've made millions of dollars over the past couple of years. I've never had a social media following over 6,000 people. I've never had an email list bigger than 5,000 people. And I've still done pretty well. And the reason for that is because my content does a lot of the heavy lifting. And my philosophy is I shouldn't be working more than 20 hours a week on any one of my businesses. If I am, then that means I am doing something wrong. Now, don't get me wrong, it takes a little time to get that foundation set up, but once you have that foundation set up, your content should be doing a ton of work for you. So how do we create content that does all that work for us? That is exactly what we're going to figure out with this little framework that I've come up with. So let's dive in and let's see what the hell I'm actually talking about. So when we think about content, there initially are two layers. So we'll say layer 1 and layer 2. When people first started creating content online, it was always about layer 1. And that worked really well because you were the only person in your niche, or maybe you dominated the search engine rankings. You were the top dog. And so you could get away with layer 1 content. Layer 1 content involves outcomes. So what's going to happen for this person after they watch, read, consume this content? Problems. The problems preventing the person from achieving the outcomes, and the mechanisms. How do you solve the problems so you can actually achieve the outcomes? And some people still try to do only this type of content. And this is a lot of the how-to content. So this works if you're a plumber and you say, this is how you fix a leak. But the problem is everybody else in the world is creating this content, how to fix a leak. So then you want to stand out a little bit and you want to differentiate between yourself and the rest of the crowd. And so how do you do that? Well, this is where layer 2 content started to come into play. Layer 2 content, experiences, opinions, and worldviews. So what happened though online is there started to be a divide between these two pieces of content. Some people just love the layer 1 because they like to say, you know what, I just want to get down to business. People just want the answer. I'm just going to give them the answer. But then the gurus start to tell you, well, educational content doesn't work. Don't do educational content. You're teaching too much. Because you're teaching too much, that means nobody's buying from you. And that is not true whatsoever. People love learning. And educational content is not going to prevent you from people buying from you. Because people will go, oh, this person taught me something. What else are they going to teach me? But the problem was, when you don't have the layer 2 content, then people find it hard to go, how are you different from this other person? But now that we have hundreds or thousands or millions of people all competing for the same audience, they were required to come up with another level. And this is the level that a lot of people tend to miss. So now what we have is layer 3. And layer 3 is identity, transformation, and becoming. And this layer is what some people are really, really good at. And because they're so good at it, they go viral a lot. A lot of their accounts, social media accounts, blow up. They get a lot of followers because we don't live in a trust economy. The gurus are trying to tell you, we live in a trust economy. And in a trust economy, people want authenticity. They want to feel that connection. And that's true. But trust has always been a thing in business. Ever since the first person exchanged money for something else, you trust that when you give someone money that they'll give you exactly what they're saying. Like, trust has always been there. Yes, there's a lot of unscrupulous people who break the trust, but trust has always been there. So the trust economy has always been part of the economy. What we're really dealing with now is the identity economy, where people know they have a ton of different options to find the things that they want. So now what they're doing is subconsciously, they're looking for those people that they can identify with, where they can see a part of themselves within that other person. And this is where identity transformation, becoming, really take things to another level. The problem, okay, there's a problem with each of these layers on their own. So we talked about layer one on its own is just straight education, where people will go, thank you for that information, I'm out. And that's it. If you only do layer two, you'll get a lot of people that really don't care about what you do, but they care about how you think. Like, oh, great, like you have this opinion, and so this is why you'll post something on social media that took you 5 seconds to create and it blows up. It's because everyone loves to share their opinions and all those wonderful things. And same with experiences. This is my experience walking through Italy as a black man. Okay, I'll watch that, but okay, no, they don't think, okay, well, how can you help me now after this? Like, what do I do for them? Because there's no layer one content. When you do simply layer three, people feel very deeply with you, and they'll build that connection and they will follow you. But because you don't have the layer one, they'll still go, oh, I didn't even know you helped me with anything. I didn't even know you sold anything. And so people are getting very good at the layer three, and they're going, man, I'm really busting my ass trying to create this amazing content and nobody's buying from me. What's the problem? Or you have people doing layer one content and they're going, I'm creating this amazing content that shows people how to do this thing, but it's not converting. It's not working. People aren't connecting. What is the issue? And so what you want to do is you want to have all three of these layers in your content, if you can. And I say if you can because there's short form content where you might do something that's 10 seconds. I'm not expecting you to get all three layers in there. But this is why it's important to also have some type of long form content within your repertoire, within your portfolio, so you can integrate all of this. Now, how does this actually work? Like, how do we actually implement this? The best thing you can do is create a content bank. And so we have layer one. And so you can create a spreadsheet, just a piece of paper on a whiteboard, wherever, where you would go, okay, these are the outcomes that I've achieved, right? And you just list all the outcomes. Here are the problems that I faced with all these outcomes, okay? And you might have to do multiple lists of problems because each outcome might have their own separate list of problems, right? Here are the different mechanisms that I did to achieve each outcome. So we can see how all these are tied together, right? That's why they're in the same layer. Then we go layer two. And instead of thinking about these on their own, which is where I used to struggle, right? Someone would say, well, you really need to integrate storytelling into your content. And I would think, like, how do I do that? Now I'm just randomly thinking, I'm trying to think of like random stories, and I always fell flat. But if we think about our experiences, go, okay, when I achieved this outcome, what was my experience? What did I have to go through, right? So the first time I made over $100,000 in a week, what was that experience? Like, what did I have to go through? And then that helps me think about the problems and how I actually achieved it. Okay, so then you have your experiences. And then you can have your opinions. Opinions are very powerful because opinions can really help differentiate you versus everyone else. And so you see a lot of people they really excel at creating the contrarian type of content. So, one of my opinions, I said at the beginning, I think you should only work 20 hours a week on your business. Like you should have an online business that you've built where you only have to work 20 hours a week or less on it, right? Like that's a very strong opinion. And so again, I have to look at all the rest of these things. I'm like, okay, what opinions helped me get these? What opinion helped me get to that outcome? Because whatever outcome you achieve, there is some opinion behind it that led you there. Okay? And so now we got that. And then worldviews, just how you see the world. Okay, so for me, one of my worldviews is, it's important for you to seek joy. Yes, you want to make money and do all those things, but it's easier to make money when you're enjoying the process. And so what ways can you do to seek joy? And so when I made $100,000 in a week, or the time I've made $300,000 in a month, what worldviews helped me get to that outcome? Can I have done it if I didn't find joy in what I was doing? Probably not. Okay, so now we start to see how all these things begin to tie into each other. And then we have the layer 3, where we go identity. And identity, we could be, how did I see, in the past, how did I see myself? So what was my past self? What's my present self? What's my future self? What am I still striving for? So I still see myself as someone who has a ton of flaws and everything. And it's not that I look at these flaws and I go, oh man, I suck. But I look at them and I realize there's still things I want to improve. So if I can talk about my future self, who I'm trying to become, that becomes powerful for people. If I talk about my present self, who I am now, that's powerful for people. If I talk about my past self, I was this way, but because I was this way, I was unable to achieve this specific outcome. So I had to make this change. So that's when we talk about transformation, ties a lot into identity. Whenever we're helping people, we're usually having to help them because they have to become someone different. If they could achieve what they really wanted by being who they are now, they would have already achieved it, right? And so we have to talk about what's that transformation? What do they have to go through? What things do they have to change in their life? And this can be really polarizing, and that's okay. So for example, Alex Hormozi will talk about how he works 12 hours a day, and they don't plan on having any kids because this is their lifestyle. They're really about the hustle and grind. And some people will look at that and go, I totally respect that. I get that, yeah, I want to achieve the levels and heights that he's achieved. So I feel like that's what I have to do as well. I have to make that transformation. While other people will go, no, that's ridiculous to even think about working that hard or doing that. Then it feels like you have no life. Like you shouldn't be missing your friends' weddings or children's birthdays or any of that kind of stuff. You should enjoy that aspect of life. So it's not right or wrong, but because he has that worldview of, to get what I want, this is how hard I have to work, there are going to be people that completely align with it. And you see the success of that when people totally align with you. And there are going to be people who totally do not align with it and go, that's ridiculous. And that's fine, because there are also going to be the people who don't align. They're going to have their own group and everything. And so this is where you see a lot of coaches and course creators doing soul-led businesses or life-first businesses and that kind of stuff. And they're doing well because there's also an opposite side to the hustle side, right? There's no right or wrong. It's just you going, this is my worldview. This is how I see things. And because I see things this way to achieve this outcome, this is the stuff that I had to do. This is the transformation that I had to do. And so becoming is tied a lot into the present self and your future self. Becoming could be the aspect of, this is what you're going to become. This is who you are now, and this is who you will be. And of course, when you can talk about that, that becomes very, very powerful for converting people. Assuming you can do it, right? A lot of people do a poor job of not being truthful around that kind of stuff. But if I sit here and I say, I'm someone with ADHD who has 3 kids, and I don't have to work that hard on business. Like there's weeks where I do work 40 hours a week, not because I have to, but because I want to, and I like what I do. But do I have to do it? No. But to get to that point, I had to go through this specific type of transformation, and then I had to change my identity and how I saw myself. And with all of that, I became this person. And so we could see within our long form content, when we can tie all this stuff together, all this stuff, we have this nice package. And so when you're creating content, you can actually, have a checklist. layer 2, layer 3. And you'll find that if your content isn't performing in a certain way, then it's probably missing one of these layers. Like if you feel that people aren't getting through your whole video, well then it's probably not doing a great job of the layer 1 stuff, where it's promising, look, this is the outcome that you're going to get. Okay, I probably could have done a better job of the outcome with this video at the beginning if I would have said, you know what, I'm going to show you how to create this piece of content that is always guaranteed to convert viewers into buyers, and it's only going to take you 5 minutes to figure it out. Right? Like then it becomes a bit of a stronger outcome. And then I talked a bit more about the problems. You know, are you tired of sitting there working really hard on creating content, and you might spend 3 hours on a piece of content that completely flops? Well, don't worry. I'm going to show you how to ensure that your content has everything that it needs for that success. Right? Okay. So maybe I should edit it and bring that into the beginning, because that sounds much better. But you go through your content and you can say, okay, you know, does it have layer 1, layer 2, layer 3? And when I say layer 1, I don't mean all of these things, right? Usually, but they're all usually tied together, right? So it's very hard to talk about a problem without also talking about either a mechanism or an outcome. It's very hard to talk about an opinion without having the worldview there as well. It's hard to talk about a transformation without something about identity or becoming, right? So they all start to tie in together. But because you have this content bank here that you can look at, like, okay, today I'm going to talk about how to create better offers. Okay, now I can't just talk about creating better offers. Now I want to make sure I talk about my experience, because again, with my mind, I can get very lost and not talk about experiences. I just want to say, okay, this is the amazing way I found how to do this thing. And I get so excited just talking about the process that I don't build a connection, because again, I'm not talking about my experiences, my opinions, my worldviews, my identity, my transformation, becoming, and all that kind of stuff. So when you can do that, and you can do that consistently, what starts to happen is you start to see that your content starts to work harder. And when your content starts to work harder, it means you don't have to work as hard. And that's what we really want. So when people talk about, well, you know, if you really want to get good with content, you need to post 5 times a day. Or, you know, if we're talking about YouTube, you need to do 3 videos a week. They're saying that because the videos you are creating, they're missing 1 or 2 or all these layers. But when people get really good at that, their videos doing stuff, what happens is subconsciously they start getting all these layers involved, and it just works. They develop this subconscious checklist where they go, okay, I know I'm supposed to do this, 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 and everything's working so far. It's great. This is also where you have to be careful, because the gurus will say, you know what, what's trending now is vlogs. What's trending now is how-tos. And you could sit there and go, okay, am I supposed to create a vlog? Am I supposed to create a how-to? Am I supposed to create some other type of content? So on Instagram, am I supposed to create a series? Am I supposed to do carousels? I don't get lost in this kind of stuff. I just think about, okay, what is the topic that I'm going with today? So again, the topic today I'm going with, let's say, creating better offers. Okay, within better offers, what's the problem? What's one of the problems that someone has? Well, offers don't sell. Right? If your offer is great, it should sell itself. But the offers don't sell. Okay, so they're not creating great offers. Well, I need to help them create better offers. So then they have a mechanism, and my mechanism, I'm not going to talk about all this now, is my Bones framework. If you want to learn about the Bones framework, I'll make sure I'll link the video below for that. Okay. And by creating this Bones framework, the outcome, so we'll label these mechanism. This is the problem. The outcome is, you know, I make sales on autopilot. Okay. So that's good layer 1. That's good layer 1 content so far. So we have layer 1. But now I'm looking at this and I go, okay, well, what was my experience? So let's do layer 2. Experience was the very first offer that I ever created, I made $0. I spent 3 months on it and I made $0. The second offer I ever created, I spent maybe a month on it and I made $7. The third offer that I ever created, I pre-sold it, so I didn't even make it yet, and I made $20,000 over a weekend. So that's, when I can talk about that experience, that pulls people in deeper. I'll just say, my 3 first offers. The opinion could be, I don't think you need to do deep customer research. I think customer research is a waste of time, right? So we'll say research, a waste of time. And again, I don't have to include all these elements, but we're seeing when I can stack them all together, how much stronger the content becomes. Okay, and then we have the worldview. Let's come up with a worldview for these kind of offers. So when I was going through all this, what happened was smaller and faster is more money, than bigger and slower. That can also be an opinion. I don't want you to get too caught up with like, what's the difference between worldview and opinion? Don't really worry about that too much. Everything. Okay. 3, identity. We'll say identity. My first offer, I was cocky. I thought just because I knew how to do something that people would buy it. But, it was obviously sucky. And then I got humbled a little bit. Then the second offer, again, I thought I still had that cockiness about it and it didn't sell. Okay, a little more humble. Then my third offer, I just said, okay, it's not about me, it's about my audience. Let me figure out what they want. They want this thing. Okay, let me give it to them. And I did that. And then I made money. The transformation that I had to go through was understanding that just because I see something that's valuable, it doesn't mean the world sees it as valuable. And so the offers I have to create, I have to ensure like this is the thing that they want. Even though it's something easy for me and I might go, that wasn't a big deal for me, that doesn't mean it's not a big deal for someone else. Okay. So with that transfer in the becoming would simply be, now I'm this person where I can almost immediately look at someone's business and say, okay, that's a good offer. That's not a great offer. This offer has potential. Let's change this. Now I just only create offers that I know people want and everything. And because I create these kind of offers, it makes my life easier. And now I get to live this kind of life and yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. Okay. Stacked all that together. Again, we can see that's a solid piece of content and everything. And so I'm not good at following certain structure, right? Some people will say, when you're doing a YouTube video, you need this 3-act structure. You need this 5-act structure. I'm not good at that. I'm just good at just talking, brain dumping out of my head and everything. But it's important to kind of have a checklist of things. And when I have this kind of checklist, you get a great piece of content and everything. And so I do have a checklist for this video. I'm not showing, and I've already covered everything. And now I'm just having fun with you because I like you. I like you and everything. So hopefully you can see, this is how we can break all this down, nail it down. Got it. Now, can you apply this to your whole business? And how does this apply to you getting to $25,000 a month and just living an easier life? Well, I have another video below if you check that out, or maybe I'll put it up here, one of those things. But this is your man Scribs. Again, I enjoyed this. I love working with you and everything. Like, follow, subscribe, do that amazing stuff because I'm going to keep on doing this. This is just way too much fun. Anyways, I'll catch you later. Peace.